Excellent. Well, I'm excited to be joined here by Keith Koo. And Keith, we kind of go way back now, right?
We
We've
do.
shared the
We do.
stage a number of times in fireside discussions and at different events we've both been part of. But before I give the stage to you, Keith, I got to give you an introduction. So if you're not familiar with Keith, Keith is the host of Silicon Valley Insider Radio Show and podcast, vice president of U.S. Capital, a couple decades of experience as a business and technology executive in banking, corporate development, finance, founder and managing partner of the Guardian Insight Group, a technology advisory firm. He serves as a mentor and advisor for everybody. Right.
Yeah.
I tell you, you're a mentor for a lot of innovative companies, breakthrough technology startups, incubators. You've been a great resource to me personally with James Doing Group, and I appreciate that, Keith. Keith, thank you so much for joining us as we're going to talk AI for VCs and investors today.
Hey, thanks a lot, JD. You're making me blush. That's why I like being a host, because I don't really like introducing myself. So thank you for all your kind words. And I love the fact that we've gone way back, and really have enjoyed your presence on stage, off stage, and just the groups that you've been curating. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. And we're going to dive right on into it because you and I actually shared the stage. Boy, this was probably back in April, maybe even, where we talked AI in the future of AI in the workplace, let alone where things are going. And there's various forms of AI. We can talk about Gen AI, personal AI, what have you. But AI in that VC world, in that investor world, is unique. So talk to me to start off with, how do you envision the role of AI in venture capital evolving over the next few years, particularly next year?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. And just to give some more context to that event we did back in April or so at the Ritz in San Francisco that you so finally curated, we had, without naming names, these are the chief data scientists of Fortune 500 companies, and they were struggling with what does artificial intelligence mean versus the roles as keepers of data. And why I say that's important is that it's not that different in the VC world. Generally, the VCs are going to be smaller in population than a Fortune 500 company. And Fortune 500 companies have large employee groups, large IT departments, or people dedicated to data science. So when you think about the disruption possible in the VC world, I mean, it's not just, because we could go a couple of ways with this, JD. We can talk about how it's changing how VCs think about investing and the companies they invest in. But we can also talk about how do investment firms and VCs ingest technologies in AI to help their processes out as well. So that's the framework, and we can go either way on this. But I just wanted to really open people's minds up, because the reason why you had an event that I was honored to be a part of is that you have these significant data scientists who themselves are trying to figure out what artificial intelligence means to them.
Well, so let's talk about that. In what ways are emerging technologies, especially AI, our key focus here today, but emerging technologies reshaping traditional investment strategies? You've been in this space for a long time. How's it reshaping that, for that VC world?
Well, this is a great question. So for those who've been following since the rise or advent of ChatGPT on the public market, say November of 2022 now, we talk about dog years. What's happened is there was a lot of initial investment. And we can talk about this right now, that if people are kind of, we have the talk about early adopters and fast followers, and then the laggards that come on, like that whole cycle. A lot of investment firms jumped in to artificial intelligence with ChatGPT, Anthropic, all these other companies, because they didn't want to miss the boat on AI. What they're really talking about is large language models, or LLMs. And, year and a half, 2 years later, we've actually have what I'd call a hangover for people investing in those technologies. And, just to say it outright, and again, these are my opinions, people can feel free to disagree. We're going to end up with 4 or 5 big LLMs in the United States, or US-centric companies. And we already know kind of who those are. I don't need to name them, but they're pretty obvious. And so then we talk about, well, all that other investment dollars that happened the last couple of years were companies that said they're doing AI. And a lot of times they're relying on these already big LLMs. So the question about where are we headed, I think right now, And I was at right before we got onto stage, I talked about last week we had an AI hardware and edge summit here in Silicon Valley, and both as my role as an investor funding companies, but myself as press for Silicon Valley Insider, I get a unique perspective that the companies that were pitching last week to 1,200 attendees, very significant. We've kind of have to, and when I say AI can go very broad. So I'm just talking right now about the LLMs that happened the last couple of years, those investments, and now you have companies like a Meta, otherwise known as Facebook, or a Google, or a Microsoft, who've ingested all of this hardware called GPUs. Now, for NVIDIA, for instance, if people know, one GPU list price is about $40,000. So last year, Elon Musk says, hey, I just bought $1 billion worth of GPUs. It sounds like a lot of money, but you divide $1 billion by 40,000, and those are the things that come up. On stage last week, there was a number of keynotes, and the vice president of data centers, or the head of data centers for Meta, basically said, do you realize that 100,000 of these GPUs running is about the equivalent, and GPUs, processors, it's equivalent of 30,000 washing machines running 24/7. So there's a footprint, there is energy, there is all the factors that we've looked at in my 2 or 3 decades working. Were paused because the LLMs, people can do everything they want with ChatGPT, Anthropic. The big players are figuring out how to ingest all that technology and how they're going to optimize that. So I say that from the life cycle of that particular investment group, we're pausing because people know that anyone who says they have a new AI startup, and there's so many different ways we're going to have to do follow-up shows on how much we need to do to qualify that. We're looking at a hardware play right now in terms of how do we optimize that hardware. And I want to also know that we'll probably do a series because there's so many other things. When we talk about AI investing, there's something now called foundational models. And foundational models are what are the actual innovations, in my opinion, happening in AI. So LLMs is a form of a model, but now we think about, one of the things I'm really passionate about is how to cure for diseases. So you think about frontier models in healthcare, life sciences, other frontier models in other industries. We've not even scratched the surface on that yet. And so in summary, and I know I went long on that,
No.
we've had 2 years of investing in what people thought was AI, but they're really investing in LLMs. And we still have many, many, many years and decades of other innovation happening in AI and machine learning.
So let's go specific sectors. What specific sectors or industries? You mentioned, healthcare could be one. But which do you feel are going to benefit most from advancements in AI? Let's just say in the next year.
In the next year, well, first of all, going longer. I know you asked for a year. No industry will not be touched. Every industry, that's a double negative. Every industry will be touched by AI and ML at some point. I think on the horizon, as we speak, there is a lot of work already being done in healthcare, genomics. The problem there is that there's going to be a lot of investment dollars, and a lot of people are working on it. I'm an investor in a couple of startups myself. The key there is that take the human genome. You have 3.2 billion base pairs. To do the entire human genome to be analogous to what people did in ChatGPT, there isn't a machine big enough, the size of the universe, that could do the entire mapping of the human genome from a predictive analytics. And so that's going to take quantum computing. So the frontier models are being built, but the ability to compute that, or computational power, is not there yet. When I think about, more practically speaking, things that are ripe for disruption are back to the world I'm living in finance and in investing. We think about what can be done and how we qualify or evaluate in due diligence companies that we want to invest in. So one of the things I want to bring up, because I like just giving comparisons, the whole concept of using AI in investment decisions is not new also, right? AI has actually been around, the term, since 1959. So let's look back when Twitter was coming up in the mid 2000s. People don't realize that Twitter was being procured as a service without any of us using it or knowing that it can be monetized through advertising, that hedge funds were using Twitter data in order to do prediction on investments that they were seeing, or market corrections or market correlations. So think about it now with all the data we have and the ability to look at everything that's ever been transacted, ever been traded. I believe that VC firms, investment houses are going to use more, it's hard to say unbiased because there's always biases, but more attempts at unbiased data to make investment decisions on the companies they are looking to. And so when VCs say that we have an investment thesis, they're going to be able to test that thesis beyond intuition or gut feeling. They're going to be able to analyze that against a data set of known other transactions in that space. So if I said, hey, a lot of times I want to look at every company that's ever, every startup that we have data on this sector, I can actually look at it and use predictive analytics and models to see what the trend line is. And then I can actually make investment decisions, not just on my own experience. I mean, a lot of investors, just like any profession, there are a lot of investors who work on their past experiences and their gut feeling and how great they've been in the past. They can now augment themselves with these technologies and tools.
Yeah, it's interesting because they have been using it for a long time, right? And 10 years ago, I was working with a social media analytics firm, and that social media analytics firm really took social listening and learning, right? What's the sentiment around a brand, and putting that into models to be to make decisions around product, to make decisions around publicity that they're getting. They could truly A/B test, right? And it was through these models that they're able to do that. So, well, let's take it towards risk assessment then. What ways can AI help in assessing the risks associated with new ventures, particularly tech-heavy startups that you live in that world sometimes?
Yeah, I love this question. Thanks, JD. And just so people remember, if they've been with me or they've known me professionally, I used to run technology risk for MUFG Union Bank North America, and risk assessments was one of my areas that I had direct control over. So think about when we look at risk in a bank, there's operational risk, there's credit risk. So usually technology risk falls under operational risk, and we're looking at the risks that third parties have to whether a bank is going to fail or not. And when I mean fail, like an operational failure, something that can take the bank systems down, and then therefore you can't get access to your money. Other risks involved in banking is specifically around biases, whether I'm going to give somebody a home loan, a credit card, et cetera. And then there's fraud, the things that happen with like credit card. Earlier this week, my daughter, who's in the Midwest, was trying to buy a concert ticket on our credit card, and that's totally legit because she's authorized. And I got a flag that said this transaction got halted because why are you in California buying a concert ticket in the Midwest? Those are all forms of risk. And the great thing about banking versus other industries is that model risk, instead of AI risk, model risk, which AI is a model, has been around for decades. We've had to do this for at least 2 decades in terms of making sure that you can get a credit card and that you can get a home loan without any biases. So when I think about risk assessments for other industries, including investment houses that are less regulated, adopting the same types of procedures that a bank does is very healthy in terms of being able to understand future risk. Now, what I think has now a forcing function, because this role I had over a decade ago, I was shocked that only U.S. banks have financial penalties and laws related to these financial models and risks. Other industries arguably don't, or they're not directly regulated that way. So I think about healthcare, and one of the barriers last week, Andrew Ng giving that keynote at this AI and Hardware Edge conference said that he felt that AI was behind, healthcare was behind in accepting regulations or putting out regulations related to healthcare, actually oppressive regulations, and not adopting AI faster. Now, of course, he's probably got reasons why he wants to do that. But I agree. I think that one of the interesting comments he made, and again, I know that we're dealing with lives, so I'm not minimizing that, but we hire people in healthcare all the time, and humans make mistakes. The thought that before we adopt AI in healthcare that it has to be 100% working is not realistic. What I would like to say is think about the way we do autonomous driving, and the president of Cruise also was one of the keynotes at this conference I was at. Autonomous driving, yes, you want to be 100% accurate all the time before you put out something into the market. But if I'm thinking about healthcare on the mundane, charting, um, patient admittance in the hospitals and how many days, that doesn't affect the delivery of the healthcare in the moment to the patient. That is a financial administrative thing on the back end that seizes up healthcare for the ability to do processing to actually give more patient delivery. So that is an area I think is ripe for both disruption, but also back to your question about risk. Those are all risk exercises I gave. Whether or not I focus all my effort on maintaining, preserving life, which is great, or whether I'm pushing paper or pencil, pushing in the back end. I think all that, my opinion, the government should open up and say we are okay with some level of inaccuracy, given that humans are far more inaccurate in the mundane than a machine or a robot is.
We're building the plane while we're flying it, right? I hate that analogy, but it's true when it comes to AI. So how do you think, from a talent standpoint, how AI is influencing that talent landscape from startups, within startups, and what should VCs look for in founding teams moving forward? Because people aren't, having a wealth of information or wealth of experience yet on this.
This is it sounds like an easy question, and I pondered this a lot. It's not that easy in that talent is being disrupted. I mean, not just what we think about in technology talent, but in all areas. I believe I used to be ridiculed speaking on and regurgitating what McKinsey and Bain said, I think maybe about 5 years ago. It was before pandemic. They had each put out papers saying that within 5 years, many blue collar jobs would be disrupted, and within 10 years, white collar jobs. And they were very clear to make it state, because they're hedging, not that jobs would be eliminated, just that jobs would be disrupted, right? And that leads people to think of elimination.
Right.
I was questioned, like, it's not 5 or 10 or 10 or 15. The CEO of Time Magazine, I can't remember his name now, but his name is also Keith. At the time, we were doing these virtual rooms during pandemic on Clubhouse. He had said, hey, wait, nobody's questioning what Keith said about the disruption, just whether it's going to be 5 or 10 or 10 or 15 years. That was just whether it was 5 years out. And then a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, ChatGPT came out. I got all these texts and I got all these emails like, oh, how did you know? And as much as I like to take credit, it's not something that I need to take credit for. We know that since the Industrial Revolution, technology, like a hockey stick, is very, very disruptive and changes things. And that's what we've seen. What OpenAI did is really represent that sudden disruption that happens, that dislocation in how things happen. So the question about talent, I believe that right now it's really hard in many cases for, I think, early VCs, people that don't have as much experience, trying to ascertain what is talent and what has been procured or borrowed, right? And I think that the Pareto principle of 80-20 still is always in effect, that I believe that in terms of an innovative startup, you should be able to tell me, and I should be able to hear it, that you are embracing technology or say AI to make your coding or your systems integration much more efficient. Because if you're trying to say that it's purely off of your own brainpower innovation, I'm going to say either that's really cool that you're that smart, but that's really inefficient, or you're dishonest.
Let's take that from a competitive landscape then. Do you see, or how do you see, I guess, AI altering the competitive landscape and competitive dynamics among startups, and what implications does this have actually for VCs?
So I think the competitive landscape is that it is really easy to start a startup right now. If you've got a technology idea, you don't need to really raise much money. And I get this question every week, or I get pitched every week. And if you're a company that has an AI product or solution, when you're talking about raising money, in most cases, I should be able to be presented an MVP or a proof of concept on something that you've been able to do with very little money or on your own, because you can do the coding and you have all that. So that's one part of it. The implication to pitch to me as an investor is that you have to have a very differentiated idea or product, and it has to have a moat. It has to have something that's defensible, because why wouldn't somebody be able to do what you did next week or a month later? It is that fast. There's very little difference or nuance in what, if you can create it in a day or a week or a month, somebody else can create it in a day, a week, or a month. So now you have to show me what other attributes make you unique. Now, it is true. We always say, I would think for a really savvy investor, that we don't invest in technologies, we invest in people. And investing in people, and people with perseverance and grit, and people with good ideas and execution, that's way more important than investing in an idea or technology.
Well, so I guess that takes me to ethical considerations, right? When you're talking about investing in people, not necessarily that AI technologies. As AI technologies continue to evolve, what ethical concerns should VCs and investors be aware of when investing in AI-driven companies?
Oh, I love this question. AI and ethics is my jam, right? And that ties into the regulatory and some of the other philosophical things that you and I share. I'll start off. We're in Silicon Valley. There is a group of people, including people that I know and I would consider friends, who absolutely are committed that if they're fine with machines overtaking humanity eventually, because that is their belief on what evolutionary trajectory that the universe is on. That is their belief. That's not solely mine. I'm just saying that there are people.
The Skynet, man.
For those, a lot of my audience is Gen Z and younger. Skynet is Terminator, for those who are trying to get that connection. Yeah, that's what freaked out a lot of us in our youth. So let's not talk about them, the people that don't care if they get obsolesced by the machines. Let's talk about the people that care about. I say this a lot on stages. Might not be a popular opinion. I believe that AI is a tool, and I believe that tools are meant to be used by humans in order to enhance productivity, creativity, enhance humanity. That is my own belief about what we should be doing with AI tools, right? We control the machines don't control us. No matter what people think about, we're not even getting into AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. We'll have another show on that as well. So AI ethical considerations, what we talk about right now is, I believe that investment houses, VCs, need to develop their investment thesis and what their own ethos is around that. Because AI, as you were talking about us building a plane in midair, it is hard to dictate what AI and ethics mean. I can say what it means to me, and I believe I can say what it means as a U.S. citizen, but AI and ethics could be different based on jurisdiction. Let me say this. My parents are immigrants from China to Hong Kong. I was born in the United States. I bring this up that China is perhaps the biggest rival to the US in artificial intelligence. And their standards around data privacy and AI, as much as they want to protect their citizens, could be vastly different, and is vastly different than what we believe in the United States. And in Russia also has very different AI and ethical considerations on what are legal and illegal in that country. So you have these three superpowers with different jurisdictional understanding of what they believe is ethical use of AI at a country level, right? So back to how investment houses, because you asked the question, is that if you think about the US and the EU having very stringent data privacy laws, and they can continue to get better, I need to know what I'm investing in. And so the questions I ask are, how did you develop your AI without giving away the secret sauce? But a lot of times we're under NDA as investors. So once we've engaged, how are you implementing this? And personally, I have a feeling in terms of my own personal investments as an angel or as an LP, is that I want to invest in companies where founders have character and have ethics, personal ethics, right? Because what happens in artificial intelligence, I brought up the bank, how we regulate the model. All models are built with the biases of the creator. So biases in itself are not bad. It sounds bad, but when I write a program, I'm not a developer, but if you wrote a program or the developers write a program, it'll be imprinted with the ethos of that developer or that company that asked them to develop the software. The most important thing, back to how banks do it, is we have a process to identify the biases and then correct them. And correcting them is the really important part of it. And so you need to correct that before the model goes into production, not before the model goes to production. As you're identifying the biases, you need to identify them, program them out, and then test that the biases are gone. So back to how we invest in AI, right now, all these startups are too small and don't have any corporate experience. So they probably have no idea what they're doing. I'm going to give you one very fun example. I have a friend who's an executive at a technology company, and their assistant, who comes from France, was using not just a note-taking bot, but the note-taking bot does translation because their native tongue is French, working for an American company. The note taker, unbeknownst to my friend, the executive, was biased towards writing things that are snarky and are gossipy. And so the minutes as written was basically saying very gossipy things about the executives in the meeting, even though the executive meeting that never happened. It's just the way that the note taking took place. And the email, the notes automatically got emailed to the 20 people not in the meeting. And so they all had a transcript of these very snarky and gossipy comments in a professional setting. That's bias.
That absolutely. I know we got some questions that are coming in, and we'll try to hit those. I know we're running out of time. Let's talk exit strategies, right?
Sure.
What trends are you seeing in exit strategies for AI startups, and how do you think these are going to change over the next few years?
Well, I think exit strategies, again, is also the Wild West. I think about every company should have an exit strategy. So if you are pitching, you want to say, hey, this is my exit strategy. I want to be acquired. I want to IPO. What we've seen, though, is really interesting, and I don't know if this is going to be the trend until the government. I can't predict what the government's going to do. But there was a company called Character.ai. And Google, a few months ago, bought out the founders and left the rest of the company behind. They funded the rest of the company. The general counsel became the CEO. But Google, Amazon, they have had a handful of acquisitions where they acquire the founders and don't acquire the company. And that makes a lot of the investors upset. So I just wanted to bring that up as a new form of acquisition, acqui-hire of the founders of the startup. But in terms of other exit strategies, I see that in the last 18 months to 2 years, there was a lot of acquisitions for features, a lot of incorporation of that. I think that going forward, there's been a pause. I can tell from what I see raising money for the companies, there's been a pause in what I'll call the easy money, of the money that's falling into AI. There's a lot more scrutiny now. And back to what we said a couple minutes ago, if you have a defensible moat, you have an innovative idea, the product has paying customers, it is scaling, you're in a much better position to have an exit.
This has been fantastic, Keith. We could talk for hours, and we have talked for hours about things like this. Absolutely fantastic. I have to ask you, what's next for you? What do you have going on?
Well, thanks, JD. So I'm an investment banker, and I'll be honest, I fell into that based on a culmination of my career. And so I'm looking for companies to raise money for. Back to, as a firm, we don't handle seed and pre-seed, but they can always email me, get a hold of me through US Capital or through LinkedIn. My IG is Tech Maven. But that is part of it. And then in terms of on the horizon, I'm going to continue to talk more about how to humanize AI. I think everything around what we talked about, AI and ethics, risk management, and this is more of a personal thing beyond what I do as an investment banker. This is more from my media outlet. I don't think enough education happens here. I don't think enough conversations happen. And I don't blame the startups. I think it's just a lack of knowing how large corporations do it. And I'm not necessarily a fan of large corporations, other than they have the infrastructure, they have the risk management team, they have the people that are kind of safeguarding those areas, especially in areas of finance and healthcare, energy, things that really affect people's lives. So that's going to be something that you and I continue to discuss, because I know we're both passionate about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for everybody who put comments in to the feed as well. This has been wonderful. And you can check out past episodes of Sweet Speak on my LinkedIn page. You can also listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's out there as well as jamesdewayne.com. Keith, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Thank you, JD. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.